On February 14th, 2018, 19-year-old Nicholas Cruz walked into Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. He pulled the fire alarm and gunned down 17 people as they evacuated the building. Tragic events of this nature repeat themselves far too often in America. But there's one thing about this event that stands out as really unique. Lots of people saw it coming. Before his expulsion from school, his classmates avoided him. His writings were ominous and threatening. He declared on social media that he wanted to be a, quote, professional school shooter, which was even reported to the FBI and was not acted upon. Previously, police had been called to the Cruz home 39 times since 2010. The fact that so few were surprised to hear that Cruz was identified as the shooter makes this event exceptionally tragic. One of the myths about mass violence is that people just snap and start killing people. After the Virginia Tech massacre, in which Cho Sung-Hu killed 32, one tearful young lady being interviewed by a reporter said, "He just snapped. There wasn't anything we could have done." No, he didn't just snap. But that's the soundbite that makes its way into the majority of eyewitness accounts, media coverage of the heinous acts of violence, whether it happens on campuses or in workplaces. In fact, at least 2 professors at the Institute found Cho's behavior leading up to the massacre to be growing more and more disturbing. He had intimidated several female students, and his writings began to take on more violent and obscene themes. On at least 2 occasions leading up to the shooting, Cho received a verbal warning from campus police regarding stalking complaints. It's not possible to pre-identify those who commit such acts based on a personality profile or an employment screening. However, there are easily recognized changes in behavior that justify an elevated level of attention to employees who demonstrate them. These changes are what should command and alert supervisors' attention. Keep in mind that these are indicators of stress, not predictors of violence. They should always be taken in context and together. And this means observing the patterns, the frequency, and the intensity of the behaviors, as well as the number of different behaviors. It is especially important to observe and note changes in an employee's behavior over time. The observance of these behaviors should command the attention and the care of supervisors, and evaluations should be undertaken concerning appropriate steps to ensure the safety and well-being of the entire workplace. Here are some of the job performance indicators. Pay attention to increases in absenteeism or lateness. Does the employee have a growing disregard for the safety of others? If work quality suffers, along with refusal to acknowledge the problem, or if the worker seems confused, distracted, or unable to focus, these things should warrant your attention. Illness is another issue. Is the employee taking more sick days, taking off longer than expected, or complaining of illness at work? Have they had a sudden weight gain or loss, or been neglectful of personal hygiene? These things may be indicators of significant stress. Inappropriate emotional indicators might include things like crying, screaming, sulking, other passive-aggressive behaviors. Have they overreacted to criticism or thrown temper tantrums? These are stress indicators, especially if they represent a change in behavior. Negativity. Do they blame others for their own mistakes? Do they persistently complain about being treated unfairly or endlessly talk about the same problems without solving them? These are signs of stress. Another one is changes in social behavior. You should take note of increased conflict with other workers and or withdrawing from workers that they had previously associated with. You should pay attention to expressions of desperation, and by that I mean statements similar to these. "I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't think I can stand this any much more. Someone has to do something." And of course, any talk of suicide is a red flag behavior that cannot be ignored. It is often a very short distance between the decision to do violence to oneself and the decision to do violence to other people. Substance abuse of particular concern should be an escalating pattern in which the employee is visibly hung over on the job or begins arriving at work, obviously under the influence of intoxicating substances. At-risk employees and substance abuse is a very dangerous combination. Another issue could be a romantic obsession at the workplace. While romantic involvements in the workplace are fairly common and may or may not be addressed by company policy, unreciprocated romantic obsessions are another matter. A rebuff from the object of the employee's obsession can be a powerful trigger event for violence. Something else, statements indicating identification with perpetrators of violence when it happens to pop up in the news. When workplace violence makes the news somewhere, they may make comments such as to the effect, "Sometimes I think I know how they feel. I guess there's a limit to how much you can take. We're probably not getting the whole story. I guess they figured they had nothing to lose. I know what that's like." So what can you do? If these behaviors are observed, but thus far no threats have been expressed, and no threatening behavior has been reported, this simple approach is often very effective. Number one, initiate contact with this worker in a very non-threatening way. Choose a private place in which the employee will not feel threatened. Your goal is to establish your concern for that employee. Number two, make simple, non-judgmental observations of the behaviors that got your attention. Might sound something like, "I noticed that you seem frustrated with the cutting machine a lot lately and that you're choosing to eat your lunch alone for the last week." Number three, express empathy. This is a very, very powerful tool in this. Might sound something like, "It's easy to understand how stressed a person can get, especially with so many changes. That stresses me out sometimes too, so I know how that feels." Number four is invite them to dialogue. Say something like, "I was hoping you could tell me what I could do to help you. Do you have a few moments to do that right now?" And number five is try to get them to collaborate on a solution with you. After listening to the worker vent, if necessary, segue with something like, "Well, I can see several options here," and then name them, describe them. And then ask, "What do you think would be the best solution?" Connecting with an at-risk employee who has demonstrated any of the combinations of these behaviors that we've listed opens the door to at least two positive outcomes. First, you as a supervisor earn the influence to prompt the employee to seek help and support. If your organization has an employee assistance program, you can encourage him or her to seek help there. Secondly, sometimes an empathetic inquiry is all that's needed to open up the kind of ongoing dialogue that can address grievances and correct problems. This will also make the employee more open to suggestion that in the absence of an EAP, he or she might seek help from an outside source. Preventing workplace violence is about breaking the chains of events that lead up to it. Early and effective engagement, even if it seems uncomfortable, can preserve the safety of your entire workplace. Thanks for watching.